Khyle Santiago is a U.S. Coast Guard AMT who specializes in MH-60 Jayhawks. He also takes photos for the station public affairs officer in East City. We're talking with him today on joining the Coast Guard during the pandemic, photography in Alaska, and which is better, wheels or skids. Listen in and find out.
I'm Oscar Sakaris, and welcome to the Spotters Podcast.
Yo, welcome back.
Alrighty, we're in.
Yeah. All right, dude. So we were just doing a little quick chat before we got on here. Welcome to the
Thanks
show.
for having me.
We're on episode, anytime, man. Thank you. You were on episode 19. We're going to be talking to you today about Coast Guard, helicopters,
Oh yeah,
Alaska, photography. Man, we're pretty jam-packed, you know?
yeah.
All right, let me set this up.
They were gigging me for it at work the other day too, because I didn't shave for one day, and they're like, "Oh, you got to shave." Like, I understand. At least you don't have to deal with that. But for us, they're pretty strict about shaving for whatever reason. Hopefully, that changes soon.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you got the full stash.
Yeah,
man.
It's absolutely not according to regulation, but we're aviation. We don't really worry about that too much.
Yeah. So let's just kick right off into it. So what made you become, or what made you decide to join the Coast Guard?
Ooh, so growing up, I'm obviously from Puerto Rico. I grew up basically a block away from the air station in Borinquen. And growing up, I was always watching the helicopters, the planes fly by. I had a lot of people in my nearby community that were actually coasties. And growing up, I was always super exposed to it. And once high school ended, I was 17 at the time, didn't really think much of it. I walked into the recruiter's office and I was like, "Hey, I want to join. I want to do this." I was 17, so I had to have my parents like sign me for it and like approve for me to go to the Coast Guard. So that was a whole different conversation that had to happen. And it took a lot of persuasion to get him to sign it. And finally, they were like, "Yeah, we'll do it." And ever since then, it's just been awesome. I have literally nothing bad to say about the Coast Guard. That was just mainly the reason I joined, was just exposure, a lot of exposure growing up. Helicopters and aviation, I've always been like super into them ever since I was a little kid. So that kind of just naturally happened from here to here, and then now we're here. So.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's I mean, we have a Coast Guard base here in Miami. All they flew before, gosh, I'm trying to remember, was Dolphins for the longest time. As far as I can remember, I think it was Dolphins. And they had a Falcon jet for a little bit.
Oh, good old Falcon. Wish those days came back.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Casas, the Ocean Sentries, but the Falcon, it's a pretty sweet asset to have something that fast.
Yeah, the C-144 is pretty cool. It's just, in my opinion, it was a political purchase more than an actual asset, because if you look at what the Coast Guard's inventory is when it comes to fixed-wing aircraft, the 130 can do it all, and it can do it all pretty easily. And the 144 is just that gap in between a big cargo, like search and rescue aircraft kind of deal with like what the C-130 is. The 144 is just like hey, we're always going to these small places like Miami, Costa Rica, you're going to like Bahamas and whatnot. And it just bridges a gap between having a big aircraft and a medium-sized aircraft that can perform the same missions. But they are pretty cool in my opinion too.
So for fixed wing, what do you prefer, the Ocean Sentry or the Spartan?
Oh, so as I'm sure you've heard, the Spartan has had some issues in the past. The Spartan has had some pretty serious like airframe issues. Unfortunately, the big Coast Guard plan for now is to just make it H-60s and C-130s in the long run. So neither the CASA or the C-27 are going to be in service in the long run, obviously. But my personal preference I really want to say the Spartan because it's a really capable asset. But if it wasn't for those like airframe issues, I wouldn't choose it. But
Yeah.
my personal opinion is that the Spartan is a pretty cool asset if it didn't have all those problems.
Now I know the Jayhawk is your favorite.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely, absolutely. That's big iron is what we call it. That's my favorite. That's probably my favorite aircraft ever. Just any. There you go. 60 supremacy. SR Redcon one comment. Hell yeah. But yeah, the 60s is my favorite asset ever in any branch really. Navy, Army, any branch. So it's
yeah.
just you can't beat it. So
No, I mean Big Iron for me is the CH-47 or
yeah,
yeah, H
yes.
yeah.
So initially that was one thing that was brought to my attention was that I was calling the 60 Big Iron until recently I went with HM12 to take pictures of their last 53 and they're like, no, this is Big Iron. And I kind of realized why.
Yeah.
It's a massive
That
helicopter.
thing's massive. Yeah.
It's massive and I was not expecting it to be that big and it's just a powerful aircraft really. So ever since then I stopped calling ours Big Iron, but it still holds a special place in my heart.
Yeah. Well, you you had mentioned that you basically started your Coast Guard career in Alaska,
Yeah.
and it was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
How was that? How has that kind of differed a bit from starting the pandemic and now being back to normal ops?
Right. So I joined the Coast Guard in late September, early October. I signed the papers in like late September and actually went to boot camp in October of 2020. So that was like prime time pandemic. So you could say that I went through boot camp in the middle of the pandemic. And that was a whole experience in itself, right? So they were kind of trying to figure out how to get the classes to do like the quarantine stuff and how they were going to space it out and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, we were one of those like test bed classes. So normally Coast Guard boot camp is 8 weeks long, but at the time they were implementing the regular 8 weeks plus 2 weeks of quarantine. So I got to spend 10 weeks at boot camp, including those 2 weeks of quarantine. Whereas a lot of companies after and before me, they implemented the 2 weeks into the 8 week program. So technically, the actual boot camp experience was the full 8 weeks with that 2 weeks. But the pandemic in general was, it's a blur. It was, I don't really know how to explain it any better than it was just a blur. It really impacted when I got to my first duty station in Alaska. Obviously, the whole spacing and the quarantine thing was still going on, so I had to deal with that as my first duty station. And like I mentioned before, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I don't know any better. I'm like literally polar opposites from home. Like Puerto Rico's down here and Alaska's like up here. So I'm like completely away from home and it was just a shock. It was really a learning experience for me. Um, but after a little bit, obviously Alaska wasn't really that heavily affected by the pandemic since obviously it's so secluded away from the rest of the world, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't terribly affected, but it did kind of affect the way we operated at the station at the time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's crazy. You watch all these movies of Alaska and you're like middle of
Yeah.
nowhere. There's not another car
Yeah.
on the road. You got if it's dark half the year and then you have to worry about
Yeah.
vampires coming out. You know.
Yeah. I mean, it gets pretty crazy. I mean, thankfully the area where I was in Alaska wasn't terribly like the whole 6 months of no sunlight kind of deal. It wasn't that bad, but we did have so during the wintertime the sun would set at like 2 p.m. and it would come out at like 9 to 10 a.m. So you only got like a couple hours of sunlight in between, right? And
Yeah.
obviously me being from a tropical island in the middle of the equator line, I'm looking at this like, where the hell is the sun? Like, I need it. Where's the beach? So it definitely shocked a little bit, but like I said, during the pandemic, since it is so secluded from everything else, it didn't really affect normal ops a lot. We did run what we call skeleton crew. Some other places call it min crew. So normally we would have like a full shift come in. During that time, it would be like as minimum minimal people as possible so we could run the actual place. So
Yeah, gotcha. Welcome, Mark. I see you joined Ryan. I know Ryan Clackle joined. We got questions from him. He had mentioned I can rock a stash. I haven't shaved my beard. I've trimmed it, but I haven't shaved it since 2010. So if I shave it now, man, I would probably look like 15 years younger or something.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Maybe next show I'll have like I'll trim it down and just have like a handful or something,
You can't forget what you look like without the beard. So it's you got to remind yourself every now and then, hey, this is what I look like without facial hair. So
yeah, it's I got LASIK maybe 4 years, 4 years ago, and for my whole life I had glasses. So when I first got LASIK, it's like, I don't know, I don't have any kids or anything, but there's always like, oh, when your dad shaves his mustache, he doesn't look the same. You know what I mean? So my wife was like, oh, you look so weird. Like, well, you got to put on glasses or something. I'm like, yeah, well, these are my eyes now. I'm not going to put on, I'll put on sunglasses.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that a lot of people call me at work, they call me Mario. That's like my nickname. You can kind of see why. But
yeah.
I shaved it about a month and a half ago, and I didn't tell anyone, obviously. So I just walk into work like fully clean shaved and whatnot. Everyone's looking at me like, who the hell is this? Like, who is this, a new guy? Like, who the hell is this guy? A lot of people are like, oh, well, your nickname has changed now, so I don't know what to call you anymore. So I had to grow it back. I had to like take, a couple of days and think about it. Man, like I really got to grow it back. So you got to remind yourself what you look like without facial hair. Otherwise, you're going to forget it.
Yeah, I think about that every now and then when I'm like, oh man, it's summertime, it's getting hot. Maybe I should, cut it off. And then I trim it short enough, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see my face again. So it's not that bad.
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I have no intentions of shaving it down anymore. Well, I guess fortunately for me, I have no intentions of shaving it down, but we'll see in the summertime when it's like 95 and 100% humidity here in North Carolina, how that's going to look. So I might do an impulsive shave here.
I like North Carolina.
Not bad. It's a lot different than I thought it would be. The winters are a lot harsher than I was expecting. I'm sure you recently know that this whole area of like the East Coast or actually part of the South got like a really bad snowstorm this year. So even without the snowstorm, last year's winter was actually pretty harsh too. It gets down to like 20 to 10 degrees here, and for nothing, because it normally doesn't snow. It's just cold and harsh for no reason. But the summers are the polar opposite. It's like extremely hot. It would be like, 86 degrees, 90, 95 with like 100% humidity. And you're just sitting there swimming in a pool of sweat while working. And oh man, I'm sure you in Florida experienced that. So.
Yeah. It's about the same here in Florida. We're lucky we have a sea breeze though, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, whenever the wind actually blows and gets a little bit of that moisture away from you, it's not terrible.
Yeah. So we had a few questions in the channel last night. Nick Pasquarella, he was on last episode. He had asked, what was your favorite part of Alaska?
Oh man, my favorite part of Alaska, if we're talking about just overall, would be the summers. The summer in Alaska, man, it was beautiful. Like I've never seen a more beautiful landscape. It's literally out of like a Windows like screensaver kind of deal. It was amazing because excuse me, the temperatures would not go over 60, and it was like the perfect weather. It would not go over like 65-ish. So you're just sitting there like cool breeze, sun's out, and you have all these mountains in the background. Even in the summertime with that temperature, you would still have like snow-capped mountains and stuff like that. So you'd still be able to see like the snow and stuff like that. And man, it was amazing. Just really the communities in Alaska being so small and so secluded from everywhere else were super tight. And that kind of rolled into the job as well. Everyone at the unit was super tight with each other. Everyone loved doing their job. It's just, the summers were amazing. and just the overall like environment up in Alaska. The winters were harsh, don't get me wrong, but having that tight knit community there, along with the job, was amazing. Nothing I have nothing that I enjoyed more than being in the summer in Alaska. So it was pretty good.
I did. I have heard that the mosquitoes up there are worse than
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah. If you walk into a Walmart, any point in Alaska, you'll see these like fridge magnets that have a mosquito on there, and it has like the seal of Alaska and everything, and it says the state bird of Alaska, and it's a mosquito. And it's
Wow.
crazy because the mosquitoes up there are nothing like the mosquitoes, down in the lower 48. It's like they're massive. It's like fighter jets, dude. You're like walking around in town and you're just dodging all these freaking fighter jets coming at you, trying to suck the blood out of your veins. They're massive. The
Wow, that's
mosquitoes are pretty bad.
I know in Elmendorf, Alaska, their Raptors have a special hangar to basically, like in the winter, they have this like exhaust vent that they go right above the aircraft, takes the exhaust out because you only have the doors open for a few minutes before it gets too cold to operate. Is there anything like that at the base for the Coast Guard?
It's pretty similar. Like right now here in North Carolina, the way we do it is obviously if the weather is too bad for us to go out, then we won't go out, right? There's a saying that I heard a long time ago, right? If we can open the doors, we can go. Normally, that was kind of the way it was in Alaska, but not quite. There wasn't anything like weather-wise that was too crazy for us to operate in, because thankfully I lived in the lower side of Alaska. We call it the Alaskan Panhandle. So Ketchikan is in the southeast part of Alaska, so the weather wasn't too cold to operate out of there. It's just extremely rainy, windy and stuff like that. So it was never cold enough for us to not go out. But if the weather happened to be that bad, then we would have something similar to that. It would be like, hey, we got to bring in the helicopter, close the doors, whatnot. So, and right now I think we have like a crazy wind speed. Like if the winds sustain more than like 40 knots or so, we can't open the doors. So it's something along those lines. Don't quote me on it, but it's something.
Yeah, our facility, our tower, if the winds are sustained at 35 miles an hour, we have to vacate the tower.
Yeah. Which I'm sure being up there it would be fun at 35 knots.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, this week it has been windy. They were gusting a 30, but the wind was coming like almost straight north. It was like 330 at 15 gusting a 30, and our runways run 9 and 27.
Okay.
So for the most part, all we have is like student pilots. They were not flying.
Yeah.
I think we've had four operations, probably in like 6 hours.
Jeez.
So
yeah,
that was bad. Yeah. Normally we do like 1,000, like 800 or 1,000 in a day, and we had four.
Jeez. And I thought our like 3 or 4 flights a day were bad. So I can't imagine you having to control 800 to 1,000 flights a day. That's a pretty gnarly number.
Yeah. I mean, not me. I don't do air traffic. I work down in the office. My job is mostly analytical, making reports and shit like that. But I go up to the tower sometimes, and I go up there and I'm like, oh, what's up, guys? And they're like, well,
nothing.
Ain't nothing to do.
Nothing. The winds up in Alaska weren't terrible, so we managed. Most time in the winter, we managed to just go out and perform the mission, whatever that was at the time.
Yeah. Welcome, Michael. I saw that you had joined. We're going to come up to your question here in a little bit. The last one from Nick was there any unusual camera issues working in Alaska? So, like specifically in the winter there.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, the winters where I was at least weren't crazy. They were obviously it was super rainy in that part of Alaska. So most of the times, like photography wise, I never really tried to go out in the rain when it was like blowing sideways and raining. So I never experienced anything crazy. weather-wise, so I picked up photography in Alaska about 2 years ago. So I was like borderline leaving Alaska, like right before I left Alaska, I picked up photography. And thankfully I picked it up in the summer. So I never got to experience like any harsh weather while like taking pictures out there. And thankfully where all the air traffic was, which obviously is what I'm interested in, where all the air traffic was is like right in the middle of town. So you didn't have to like go very far to go take pictures. So if the weather was, too crazy, I would just not go instead of like risking my camera and all my gear getting wet and stuff like that. But the craziest thing that I imagine would happen in a weather as harsh as Alaska would just be like your camera not operating right. I have had this problem here before where it was like 20 some odd degrees where my lens would actually freeze for whatever reason. So there would still be moisture in the air and my lens would actually freeze. So I would go take a picture and it would look blurry as heck. And I'm trying to figure out like, okay, it's clean. And I looked inside of the lens and I saw these little like frost marks around it. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So I pretty much took it back to the car, like turned it on, turned the heat on and let it defrost before I started going out again.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I've never encountered anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
I know you got night shift, so you're probably like, oh, I got to stay in the dark.
No, it's all good. Yeah, they got me working the crazy night shift right now. So for me, this is like my morning right now.
Yeah, I used to do like midnight shifts when I worked in my last job. I did midnights for probably like 18 years, but not consistently.
Okay.
It's like every week I had one shift.
So okay.
Like
yeah. So
like the whole. Yeah, it was only during COVID we had like 5 on, 5 off, and on that 5 we had to do 5 midnight shifts in a row.
Oh, okay.
And that's where like, okay.
Yeah, because I assume
I'm gonna sleep.
I assume you guys were running kind of the same thing, right? So only like essential personnel coming in during that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me right now, they have me. It's like a thing that most air stations do. It's called mids, and obviously it's midnight to 8 a.m. And I would say a good solid 80 or 90% of air stations in the Coast Guard run it that way, to where you have to do at least 6 months of that shift, but it's consistent, right? So you're doing 6 months of every week going from 12 to 8 a.m. So that's what I'm on right now. And I'm totally not counting down the days. I hope I don't miss any air shows this year. So I'm going to try and get some days off so I can adjust before going to the air shows. And thankfully they're in the weekend, so I don't have to worry too much about that.
Yeah. Do you rotate your days off?
So normally it all depends on like your supervisor and whatnot, but sometimes like if there's not a lot to do and we get done with a job pretty quickly, they'll be like, oh yeah, you can go home for the day. And then we'll just swap out people, because right now we're running 4 guys on the shift. So they'll be like, oh yeah, today's your turn, Kyle, or tomorrow's your turn and whatnot. So they'll kind of run it that way. But if it's a period of heavy maintenance or anything like that, then they're like, sorry, you have to work the whole time, because in that same time, like your job responsibilities will become higher since there's an aircraft in heavy maintenance and whatnot. So they will say basically, F off, you're staying here. So
yeah. How do you balance your photography with your military responsibilities?
So I actually don't balance a lot. I actually try to integrate a lot of it. So it's just my way of doing it. A lot of people do it differently. I'm sure a lot of the guys I know in the service do it differently as well. I try to integrate it into my job as best as I can, right? And I don't want to say that I'm working with my camera next to me all the time, but the way I do it is I try to bring my camera into work, right? And I'll just leave it in the locker. And I'm a nerd, so I always have like flight radar or ADS-B open or something like that. So if I'm looking and I see like, oh crap, there's an Osprey coming in like 15 minutes, I'll be like, start working really fast, like get my stuff done, go grab my camera, take a couple pictures of it, get the job done, and then go right back into working on whatever I was doing. So that's the way I do it. But obviously there are some times like before I got put on the mid shift, I was on the heavy maintenance team, and it's basically you have to be there doing your job the whole time because there's a deadline to meet, essentially. Yeah. So if you're not like working consistently in what you're doing, then that can cause the aircraft to fall behind schedule, and all those, all the pipeline stuff that can happen if you don't get done in time. So during that time, I was mainly like, okay, I got to focus on the job. I can't bring my camera into work, and if I do, it'll probably be like after 3 or whenever I get off, right? So I try to integrate it into my job as best I can, and obviously I fly as well. So most of the times I will try to bring my camera into the flights as well, so that I can take pictures of whether it's us parked at somewhere or if there's more aircraft out, in the air, that I can get some air to air shoots, but not quite like with them like right next to us. But I try to balance it that way to where I don't have to worry about, oh, like I have to take pictures, or, oh, I have to work. I try to just combine both of them and try to do the best I can with that. And it's worked out pretty well. I mean, I've had some crazy opportunities. I'm right now the assistant public affairs guy for the Elizabeth City Air Station page. So I try to take the pictures, and the officer who's actually the public affairs officer will try to actually put the pictures on the page and put them out to the public, right? So I that's my way of doing it. I'm sure a lot of guys do it differently. And this is obviously with my schedule and how I make it work. But there's a million ways to do it if you really want to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly what Mark was just asked, if you can contribute to the PA mission while having the camera at work. And you answer that one. Warbird Mafia had asked, or had pretty much said, you got to take your camera in. There's I've been taking my camera in for the last like week or so, and this week I was like, I'm not gonna take my camera in. And when I was leaving, there was a forestry service helicopter parked right next to our fire department, and between our fire department and our police department, and it was parked right on the center line. And I was like, damn it, I forgot the camera.
Yeah. I have a very love and hate relationship with the North Carolina Forest Service, because they have probably my favorite, like not the 60, but my favorite helicopter other than the 60. They have a 206 / a Huey. And there was one time that I was working the heavy maintenance cycle, and they actually came into the FBO for fuel. And I'm elbow deep in like the transition section of the helicopter. I'm like working in there, and I'm looking at it on ADSB. And I was like crap, man, I got to look at it. So I go outside, and I'm like just staring at it, very, very sad, like looking at the FBO of it taking fuel. And it's a really cool helicopter. So ever since that day, I have unfortunately not seen them fly ever again. I know they exist because I've seen it. So I'm still chasing that Forest Service helicopter, and I will be chasing it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, this one's it was like they have a Huey down here at a remote hangar in Homestead, but this wasn't a Huey. This was like a Eurocopter or something. It was like very newer. It had a different paint scheme from the Forestry Service. I was like,
shoot,
that's some Richie guy in the Forestry Service coming up.
They got their budget up.
Definitely wanted. Hopefully, it's there in the morning. I'll take my gear tomorrow and see if I can catch it.
Right.
But this week we got so we have NASCAR coming to town probably this week or next week. I'm not sure. So the FBOs are all getting ready to have all these rental cars. So all the green space right now is covered in rental cars.
Oh God.
But you'll have the big like EC 145s coming in, the big corporate jets coming in. So hopefully I could catch something bigger than a Cessna 172.
Right on. Yeah. I have a love and hate relationship with the Cessnas. I try to practice my panning on them every now and then. So I'll just like sit at the end of the runway and just like, all right, I guess here's another student pilot coming in. Don't get me wrong, love the guys, but the Cessnas, they're just your general aviation stuff, which I respect, but I'm not crazy big into it.
Yeah, we have some turboprops that coming in, TBMs that fly in and fly out. We got a lot of corporate jets, Citations, a bunch of Hawker jets. We got Falcons. We got an A320 that landed last month for maintenance. So yeah, it's pretty cool to see some bigger jets coming in, but they're almost on par with like a Gulfstream. They're from the tower, they all look the same size.
Right.
I mean, except for the Cessna, the little Skyhawks. They're like tiny,
Yeah.
like little mosquitoes out there. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Here at East City, we have so the ECSU, the State University, has like a flight program that they run, and it's based out of our airport. And it's just constant, man. Like we call it the Cessna lineup, and it'll be like 7:30 in the morning, and there's already like 9 Cessnas lined up to take off. And we're like, yep, it's about that time. So it's funny to watch because when we'll be flying and we're coming in to land to do whatever, like fuel, hot refuel, or just full stop, we'll just have to wait for 8 or 9 Cessnas to take off, and we're just like sitting in the back of the runway, like, oh crap, here we go. This is gonna take like another 10 minutes.
You pretty much come in at the same, like you don't do midfield arrivals. You fly in with the same pattern as the fixed wings.
It depends. So for the most part, it actually depends on what the mission for the day is. So we have like different missions. And this is far over my pay grade. Don't quote me on it, but we have different mission sets like RT2s, RT4s, and whatnot. And each of those mean like different things that we'll do that day. For example, we'll do like swimmer work, like salty. We'll work with like other boat stations to do helo ops and all that kind of stuff. And if the mission of the day requires you to do like pattern work for the pilots, or if they have to get their minimums complete, they have to basically do pattern works at home field or at an airport if they're choosing close to home field. So most of the times, if we are doing a flight that requires like pattern work, we'll try to just follow the pattern along the fixed wing guys. If we're doing like a mission with boats, right, down in like, say, for example, Cape Hatteras in the Outer Banks, and we're done with that, we're just coming back home. Most of the times we'll come into the pattern and just kind of like hover taxi or taxi into the parking lot for the ramp. It usually depends, right? If the weather is kind of crappy, then we'll just do like midfield and land right at the helipad, our helipad. So it's very variable. We don't have like a specific policy that says, hey, you have to do like midfields, or hey, you have to follow pattern work when you're coming in.
Yeah. We're looking at your airport diagram here. I see there are helipads right in front of the fire station.
Yep. So yeah, we have the 3, well, technically 4 spots, but we like to use 3 because the 4th spot is actually pretty funny. One of the first times I towed aircraft here in East City, I put the helicopter in that spot, and then the C-130 guys were all yelling at us because they can't taxi their C-130. They can't push their C-130 out of the hangar if our helicopter is in that spot because, they'll basically hit us if we leave it there.
Yeah.
So we try to use, I don't know if you're looking at the diagram still, but we try to use the ones that are closer to Alpha Charlie on the taxiway.
Yeah, I
So
see that.
yeah.
Yeah, Alpha Charlie, there's that one spot right there. Then there's another one right on Golf. There's like two helicopter spots.
Yeah. And then if you're looking at Alpha Charlie too, that's where our hot refuel area is. So that's where I get like most of my hot refueling shots. And I posted recently, and it's pretty funny because when I posted recently a picture of the 60, and I was like sitting on right next to the fire department, like right on the borderline of the taxiway. And I was like, man, I got to get these shots. Like, I'm never going to see snow again. So I got to get these shots. And I went super close to the taxiway. I was kind of sketched out because the helicopter's like landing probably like 10 to 20 feet away from me, right? And obviously, like, if I'm in uniform and I'm at work, I don't care because like I'm allowed to be, I'm doing my job, right? But I was like in civilian clothing. I was just there like, oh crap, I hope nobody says anything.
Yeah,
but thankfully I didn't.
You don't pass as long as you don't pass that double line, you're good.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah,
probably getting on the grass is a no-go.
Yeah. So I try to stay like as close as possible to this side.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. That's a pretty interesting field. I mean, it looks like you have one runway. Now, it looks like they had another runway, but it's closed indefinitely now.
So we currently have 1028 in service right now, and that old runway, has been closed for longer than I can actually remember. I think the last picture I saw of that runway being active was like back in the 50s or 60s or something like that. So it's been closed ever since. And Elizabeth City is a very like historically rich air station. You'll find like tons of pictures when we had like the the Albatross, like all those super old planes that could land in the water.
Yeah.
And actually, like you can still see it to this day where the C-130 hangar is. There used to be a boat launch there because none of those hangars were there back in the day. The current 60 hangar, which is the one where their tower is, was the only one that was back, in that time was the only one that was there. The C-130, both C-130 hangars weren't there, so we used to just literally taxi the planes out from the 60 hangar that is today into the boat launch. And you can still see that launch today, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. Looking at the. Oh yeah, I see that parking spot right
Yeah.
there. Wow. So it's kind of like Oceana, I think, has where you had taken big iron photos. They're right on like a little ramp there also.
Yeah, yeah. I guess. Oh no, I think you're just thinking of Chambers, right? Norfolk Naval Station, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's Chambers, but I think they used to have some similar asset back in the day that maybe the Catalinas or something like that. I don't honestly know what they used to have back in the day, but I know they have like a launch. I think they have a couple actually that you can still see.
Yeah. So Michael had asked a question for you: fixed wing or rotary? You answered that earlier, saying rotary is king.
Oof.
So we know
Rotary
that one.
Rotary is king. I will never go fixed wing. As much as I like it, it's just something that I personally don't want to do as a job, right? It's just my personal preference, but nothing against it.
Yeah.
I like fixed wing as well. It's just not really my kind of field.
Can you work on the fixed wings, the Hercules also?
Yeah, so the Coast Guard is obviously very different from all the other branches, right? So my job code in the Coast Guard is AMT, so Aviation Maintenance Technician. And technically, if I had to or if I wanted to, I could finish out my time on 60s and then move over to like either 65s, 130s, 144s, or C-27s. Because the big umbrella term for aviation maintenance in general is AMT.
Yeah.
So technically, like I'm actually studying for the service wide, which is the test we have to take to make E5. And they're going to ask you a bunch of like fixed wing questions, even though you work on rotary wing, because you're technically supposed to know how to work on the other aircraft since your job is like the umbrella term for all aviation maintenance.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, I know you don't want to do fixed wing, but it would be cool to have that knowledge
Yeah,
in case you ever transfer someplace and
it's how do I put this, right? It's good to have the knowledge, but like obviously we can use the Coast Guard as a bridge to get our airframe and power plant license, right? And obviously the airframe and power plant license means that you can work on anything civilian, right? So it's good to have the knowledge to work on fixed wing and the different types of airframes. But in the long term, if you have your A&P, right, then in my personal opinion, I wouldn't mind going to any other airframe if I have the knowledge to work on it. So I think it's really good to have now that kind of knowledge to work on any asset, really.
What's the? Let's see. We had so Michael also asked Oceana or Langley
Oceana by a
for
lot.
your favorite place spot.
Oceana
Why
by a
Oceana?
lot. So Oceana was actually my first exposure to fighter jets ever in my life. When I first came to North Carolina, um, I knew of a couple of guys like I followed on Instagram that are now like my best friends, really. And they were always taking pictures at Oceana and stuff like that. So one day I like literally went on Google Maps and I was like, Oceana Naval Air Station. And it's about an hour drive from here. And I was like, oof, I got, whoops. And it was like about an hour drive from here. And I was like screw it, why not? So I went there, and literally as I'm parking down, I had like a two-ship fly right over me on the runway. And I'm like looking up like, oh my God, like this is sick and whatnot. So I would personally say Oceana by a lot. Obviously, like I'm still super interested in the Air Force and what they do, but Langley recently has been really like against aircraft photography. So that's also another thing why I don't like Langley is obviously like I'm in the military. Yes, I have like access to the base, but I'm not going to risk like getting in trouble for taking pictures at an Air
Yeah.
Force base, right? Especially with Raptors being there, and I know it's like a highly classified asset still. So because of that reason, why they don't really like aircraft photography, I try not to mess with Langley. But I do love the Raptor. I do love the T-38s that they have there, and I have taken pictures of Langley before they got weird about aircraft photography in general. Oceana
Yeah.
has only been good to me, so that's why I prefer it. Um, Obviously, like I mentioned before, I have like base access, and they have the like terminal where you can go, and usually the guys are pretty chill about letting you out on like the porch is what we call it, and you can take pictures of jets or aircraft coming in and whatnot. So personally, Oceana, but if I had to choose asset wise, it would be Langley because I really like the
I mean,
Raptor.
we kind of see Langley assets at the air show. Raptor
Right.
Demo Team, they're a Langley, Langley bird. Unless they fly to, Florida and then they pick up a Tyndall
Right.
F-22.
Yeah.
Or they go to Alaska and they fly an Alaska F-22,
Right.
It's all the same,
Yeah.
I'm,
And that's my
I'm
argument.
sure we're going to, yeah,
That's
we're gonna hear more about this issue that we have of photographers getting turned away at air bases. We got a few people coming on, and I'm gonna probably reach out to a few more people about public affairs officers about what's the deal? Why can't people get pictures near an air base? How can they be better? How can they reach out? Things like that.
yeah.
So just try to send that information out there, and hopefully education also across the PAOs and the photographers together. So
Right.
we'll have
And
to. I'm going to be working on that this year.
yeah. And I mean, now that you mentioned it, like me being in that same like public affairs kind of field within the Coast Guard and whatnot, I kind of understand why they're doing it, right? Why they turn people away and whatnot. There are, I don't want to say it this way, obviously, but there are certain OPSEC things that you can't take pictures of, right? So you don't want, like, say, for example, right, I'm taking pictures of a Raptor that just came back from deployment and whatnot and has damage or some sort of like airframe work on it that will prevent it from being, a fully capable asset. And I'm there taking pictures of it. Some other guy across the globe, right? Let's say hypothetically, right, a spy or some looks at it and is like, oh, so this is how
some bad guy.
this is how they repair it. This is how it looks when it's repaired. This is how we can get it, right?
Yeah.
So that in that aspect, I understand. Now for the Coast Guard, obviously we don't have to worry about that. Who's gonna want to shoot down a friggin' Coast Guard 60? You never know, but the chances are very unlikely. So I don't really have to worry about operational security when it comes to photography in general. So actually our base is super relaxed when it comes to spotters and whatnot because they want that community exposure. And Oceana, now that we were talking about it, is the same way, right? When I first went in the passenger terminal, the guys were like, hell yeah, man, like come in. We want the community to see how the operations go in the daily so that they're not like fully like they're not exposed to it, right? And I'm sure the Virginia Beach community like has been used to it for years, right? That the air station has been there since God knows how long. So I'm sure they've been exposed. And this just my personal opinion. There's obviously a lot of operational security reasons why they don't like people taking pictures. And like I said, I don't know how the Air Force operates or how the Army operates because I know they're also pretty strict when it comes to on-base photography or off-base photography. But there's like a whole plethora of reasons why people aren't allowed to take pictures on base.
Yeah, we could talk about it for hours. I could talk about it for hours. I have, I work for the FAA, so I have access. I mean, I can't be on an airfield, but not at a military base. But I don't get turned away as often when I show my ID.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's not like because we have to do a security clearance, we have to do everything. So I could understand. I could kind of understand, some aspects of it, but at the same time, I see all these videos popping up of some kids just taking pictures, at across the street from a Burger King trying to get pictures, and the cops are like, okay, give me your ID,
right?
Damn it. You got to
Yeah.
delete your card. I'm like, dude, that's
Yeah.
not how you operate,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And I mean,
But
in that same
there's always going
area
to
that you mentioned.
be, yeah, there's always going to be those guys that are like, well, I don't care. I'm going to stand at the fence. And I'm going to do whatever I want.
Yeah,
And that's the people that are going to ruin it for everyone.
exactly.
You
And
know?
that's one of my biggest things as like obviously an aviation enthusiast and photographer is people who like don't really care and ruin it for everyone else, right? So
Yeah.
and like you, I have obviously a security clearance, I have an ID, I have access to all these places, so I don't get turned away often. And this has actually even happened to me at Langley before they got like weird with photography and whatnot, like, you know, some like SF comes on and starts asking me all these questions. I'm like, look, man, like I'm in the service, like I have access to be here. All I'm doing is taking pictures of the planes and nothing else. Like, why would I want to take pictures of the flight line? Why do I want to look into the hangars when I friggin' work in one? If I want to go take pictures of it, I'll just go to work and take pictures of it. So that
Yeah.
aspect I can understand, right? And it's my same argument, like what you said, right? The F-22, the F-35 and whatnot. You see all these things at air shows, and then you go to an actual base where they're stationed at, you try to spot, and they're like, no, 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 you can't take pictures. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, 2 days ago, I was taking pictures of it doing all these crazy things, and now you're just preventing me from doing it when they're normally landing and taking off. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah.
So it would be really
Yeah. We have
interesting.
this, at the end of this month, we have this southernmost air show at Naval Air Station Key
Right.
West. And we go there on a random day and try to take pictures, and they're like, "Oh, you can't take pictures of the hangars." I'm like, "We're going to be on base at the end of the month.
Yeah.
What's going to be the difference?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
the
I'm,
doors are going to be closed. There's nothing in
yeah,
there anyway."
exactly.
You know?
And that's like my same reasoning for like really like screw you kind of deal. Like I'm going to take pictures, right? Because if I really wanted to, like I work in a hangar, I work in a flight line, I work with like military aircraft. So it's no different than what I do for a living. Why are you being
Yeah.
so weird about it? Which I understand because of the whole operational security and whatnot, but then some aspects of it, I'm
Yeah.
still like kind of confused on why they do it. But it's all very susceptible.
Yeah. I mean, just don't take pictures of any of their special torque wrenches.
Right. I'm sure someone out there is going to be very familiar with the specific torque wrenches they use.
So we got caught up there for a little bit. Let me ask you some
Mm-hmm.
questions real quick. Do you have any personal preferences or techniques when it comes to capturing moments, such as like candid shots or action shots or portraits? Do you
Yeah.
do any of that along with the aircraft?
Yeah. So, um, someone a long time ago told me that pictures are not just pictures. You want them to tell a story. And that's the way I've looked at it ever since. Right. So obviously I've gotten a lot better. I've gotten a lot more knowledgeable over time, but I tried to make a story out of a picture instead of just taking a pictures, because anybody can pick up a camera and go take a picture of whatever they want, right? But it's about
Yeah.
telling the story that really matters, right? So I try to do that with aircraft as well. Like, yes, I can go to like a commercial uh, airport and just take pictures of jets, but like I want them to tell a story, right? I want them to be like, yeah, this plane is like the biggest aircraft. Like, if I'm taking a picture of a 777, like this is the biggest like cargo aircraft out there, or one of the biggest. So I like to tell a story when it comes to photography. I would much rather do like action shots versus candid, just in my personal preference. And that's the way I do it. I try to make a story out of it instead of just taking a picture.
How do you think those stories work best with military in mind?
With military in mind, it's just like a lot of people don't know the process that actually takes for us to get an aircraft up in the air, the process it takes for us to get qualified. Really, the overall big picture of things, a lot of people don't know, right? A lot of people just go to a military base, just take a picture of the jets. They think it's cool. I think it's cool too, but a lot of people don't know the amount of work that actually gets to be put on that plane for it to go up. So whenever I'm taking pictures, right, it's not just the aircraft, it's the pilots flying it, right? It's all those little details that go into it. So I try my best to like focus on the pilots sometimes. I try my best to focus on the aircraft, right? Or if I'm taking like a cool shot of like an aircraft being refueled, I try to make a story out of it instead of just like snapping a picture of whatever the case is.
Yeah. What's your current setup for
So
photography?
I run, as of right now, I run an R7 with a 100 to 500 L lens, and that's been my workhorse for now over a year now. So before that, I
Hmm.
obviously had some starter cameras, and that taught me a lot along the way, which weren't bad, but my current setup is my workhorse, I would say.
Yeah. What's I know we had talked about it a little bit, but Ryan says, "What's superior, wheels or
Oh no.
skids?"
So in
How
my
much time do we got?
we got a couple minutes. But I could talk about this forever. So in my opinion, wheels are better, right? Because if you're if you're helicopter wise, right? Skids are cool, but skids are very limited to what they can do, right? They can only hover taxi, they can only land vertically and take off vertically like helicopters do, right? But with skids
Yeah.
specifically, they're very limited when it comes to towing, they're very limited when it comes to taxiing, and just me being also in the line phase of work, wheels are a lot better. You just plug in the tow bar, move it around wherever the hell you need to. Whereas a skid, you would have to like bring it up into the skid somehow, like maybe put on wheels and whatnot. And it's just a whole different process that with an aircraft with just wheels on it would be cool. Now,
Yeah.
a different topic that we can talk about is retractable versus fixed landing gear, but I don't want to get too deep into that.
Well, I'll end that one with retractable. You know, it's streamlined, it's
Yeah.
slick, less drag. You know, it
Yeah.
looks cleaner
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a helicopter.
Yeah, honestly, the 65 has retractable landing gear, and I always feel like it's so weird looking at it without it down, since I'm used to looking at the 60, and I'm looking
Yeah.
at the 65 just like doing a little low approach or whatever over the runway. I'm like, where are your wheels? Like, what's going on here? But
What's what advice would you give someone that's interested in becoming a helicopter mechanic or maybe joining Coast Guard?
uh, my biggest advice would be do your research, right? Make sure that this is something you really want. I've loved the life. The work is it's hard work, but very rewarding, right? There's not a lot of jobs out there where you can actually tear down something, rebuild it back from scratch, and then watch it take off. So that's super rewarding to have. Uh, Biggest advice, man, it would be just research. Do a lot of research into what the job is. Talk to a lot of people who are in the job, and make sure you get our version of the story. Like the Coast Guard has a lot of different assets, so make sure whatever asset you're choosing is something that you really want to do for your career or for a job if you're trying to stay in the short term, right? And thankfully, the
Yeah.
Coast Guard is pretty good about giving you career options. So when we join the Coast Guard, we don't have like a specific job as every other service where you sign for a job along with your contract. We actually have the option for you to choose that job in your contract. So you could spend like a year or 2 years as a non-rate. I had to spend 4 years, but you could do like a year or two as a non-rate and then choose your job, whatever job that is, whether it's aviation or operational specialist, like bosun's mate, any of those jobs, you have the option to actually see what they do and then choose whether that's what you want to do.
That's cool. Would you consider moving to a boat or a ship and doing some time on the
No.
seas, or you're fixed on staying in the air?
I'm personally fixed on staying in the air. I had my fair share of experiences with boats up in Alaska, obviously, for a lot of years. So just my personal preference would be air, staying in the air with helicopters or fixed wing, whatever, wherever life takes me after here.
Yeah.
So just my personal opinion would be that aviation in the air is a lot better than like shipboard operations, which is why I didn't join the Navy. So
I mean, you're still part of the
uh,
Navy, right?
technically, so during times of war, we'll be part of the Navy, but as of right now, we're Department of Homeland Security, so we're along
Yeah.
the CBP guys.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a cool well, I think it's a cool branch to be in. You know, well, at least being in Homeland Security, you get to see a little bit more. You get to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's something I thought about to do in some time in my life, but I decided to go with the FAA and do air traffic, and I'll be hitting 20 years next year, so
Whew,
you know
that's a long time.
service boat has sailed.
Right.
Um, so thanks, man. Where can people find your photos?
I've been meaning to change my username because it's very tedious to write down. But if you shorten it, it would be Mario Photo. It's M4R10_PH0T0. So I've been trying to change it. I've been trying to change it so it's a little easier for people to find. But I'm gonna keep working on that and see what username I can find. But that's where most of my pictures are at.
Yeah, I'll tag you in this as a collaborator for this video so people can click on it and go right to your page to see some of the killer shots from Oceana, Coast Guard. We need more helicopters. There's not enough helicopter photos out there.
Not. We could always use more.
All right. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for coming on, dude. It was fun talking to you. Definitely have to do this again. Is there anything you want to add?
Not really. I mean, if anybody is trying to start into photography, just do it. Just pick up a camera, whatever that is, just do it. Aviation specific, if you really like aviation, just pick up a camera, head to your local airport and just try it. Like, if you really like aviation, you won't be disappointed with how much fun aviation photography actually entails. So that would be my last little cent to leave in the podcast.
Oh man, hell yeah. Yeah, man, I love it. Thanks again for joining in. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you on the next show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a good night.
Thanks for having me.
For sure. Have a
You
good
as
night.
well.